So it's a pleasure to be here today, and I promised Dave and Linda that I would keep us on time and so forth. So as a professor, we're used to everybody, professors out there write 1-hour lectures, so I have 20 minutes. I will just talk 3 times faster than usual, and we'll be all set. So enabling innovation, ensuring the talent pipeline, okay, those are 2 main topics, and we will get to those. The future of manufacturing in the United States, and I will say the future is very positive. If you walk away with one thing here today, it is that you could build things in the United States and you can make money doing it, okay? But you've got to do it via innovation and, most importantly, via the talent pipeline, which is all of us out there today. And we will talk about that in terms of the directions that we're going. So, there we go. Hello, there we go. All right. So, as Linda mentioned, I spent a year over at the White House. This was back in February 2013, so I was still there. State of the Union, we knew this was coming out of our division because we had briefed the President and PCAS, the President's Committee of Advisors on Science and Technology. I'm already losing all the acronyms. And the President said, go look it up right there in the first few minutes, and we went nuts when he said this, right? Our first priority is making America a magnet for new jobs and manufacturing. That's it. Boom. Okay? And if you look at why that's so important and why the President looks at it, look, this is why manufacturing matters. 70% of the R&D in the U.S. and 90% of the patents issued are related to manufacturing. Why? Because if you can't make it, you're not going to make any money with it. And in fact, if you look at it and if you want to help the world, it's about manufacturing. Go to a hospital, and I don't care whether it's a hospital here in New Orleans, state-of-the-art hospital, or you go to the sub-Sahara, all right? Everything there has been manufactured. High quality, you try and keep the cost as low as possible. If you can't scale it up, even something like a vaccine, Salk polio vaccine, if you couldn't scale it up to hundreds of millions, it doesn't do the world any good. There's clearly a close connection between research and development, design, and manufacturing. We see that across the board. The health of what we call the industrial commons, the know-how, so forth, workforce skills, that is all related to manufacturing. By the way, manufacturing is the biggest multiplier. Every dollar of manufacturing that manufacturing generates another $1.40 for the economy. I have heard people say, and I have read this many times, oh, a job is a job is a job. No. The manufacturing job is very important. You think about the OEM, the original equipment manufacturers, the GMs, the Fords, the Boeings. For every one of those jobs, there are another 8 supplier jobs, and there are another 6 to 8 service sector jobs. Plus, when we make things here in the United States, we reduce our trade deficit, and I will tell you, in the coming future, it will be a trade surplus, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It's an exciting time. By the way, another one that people don't realize too much is actually on the agriculture side. Agriculture is also another one that is a big multiplier, where, by the way, the U.S. dominates. And a lot of the trade discussions, the international trade discussions for free trade agreement, a lot of that gets back to agriculture because we are so good at it. And again, people worry about things like, well, oil for security and so forth. Imagine if you were tied to some other nation, not for your energy resources, but for your food resources. Imagine that kind of pressure. And this is why, the agro issues really come to play in a lot of these discussions. You learn a few things when you spend some time in Washington. And of course, manufacturing is critical for national security and international security, as I will talk about in a little bit. So there are some recommendations for AMP, which is the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership, the Steering Committee. And I won't go into the 16 recommendations. By the way, you can go online to whitehouse.gov and get all the reports. Just type in manufacturing, whitehouse.gov, not whitehouse.com. They're very different websites. Okay? And if you want to try whitehouse.com, don't do it from work because they get very upset with you. Anyways, but let me talk about the 3 key areas, and this is really what I want to focus on. And again, these are sort of the walkaways, the takeaways here. Number 1 is enabling innovation, okay? So it is just the culture of the United States okay, to be innovative, to think outside of the box, you know. And I think if we talk to faculty members or students here, or when you were students, you saw that there were a lot of foreign nationals, people come from other countries to study here in the United States. It will continue to be that way. I don't care, you know, how much they're working on it in China to be innovative and the whole bit. It is hard to change the culture. You can teach the math, you can teach the science, you can teach the engineering, you can teach the SATs, but you can't teach innovation. It is part of our DNA. And that's what it's all about. And being able to innovate is critical. And getting that innovation out to the population. So I've got a great idea. I've got to scale it up. This is what's important. Okay? And this is what we're looking at. All right? And by the way, we have stumbled in getting it out. The VCR, developed here. No longer produced here. Right? It was produced overseas, Asia primarily. The flat panel display, same thing. I like the VCR because nobody really uses VCRs anymore. I mean, you know, not really. You don't see them out there anymore. So that's gone. So people say, well, big deal on the VCR. You will say big deal on the flat panel display. Why? Because you see that screen up there? That's what's coming next, your flexible display. Your cell phone, you know, it'll look like I don't have a pen on me, but, you know, you got to, you know, your cell phone will be just your little pen and you'll just pull it out, and that's what it's going to be like. It's going to unroll, and that's where it's coming. And by the way, you talk about the supply chain there. All right, look, all those electronics that everybody says, well, the supply chain has all moved to Asia. All that electronics and so forth, you can't put on the flexible electronics. Try and roll those up. They'll pop off. Everybody has had a chip pop off of a board, right, when you bend it, flex it a little bit. All right, so there are game-changing technologies that we are the leader in over here, and I think we've learned our lesson. You know, in terms of we've got to scale them up. Once they're scaled up, you know, it's easy to move it out of a laboratory or a bench top, right? It's hard, you know, once you scale it up. So we've got to get that innovation out, and we've got to get it out quickly because other places will copy us. It's hard to get those innovations out, to learn all about these new technologies, to implement these new technologies without the talent pipeline. That's point number 2, equally as if, and maybe even more important than point number 1. So we have got to have the talent out there to support these new innovations. How do you get it out there? You know, I think many of you have spent time in production facilities. If you've gone to, and I come out of BMW in South Carolina, if you see an X5, an X6, or an X3 anywhere in the world, came from South Carolina. Made in the U.S. The White House guys loved it. X5 goes by, but made in the U.S. Carfus, what are you talking about? That's a German car. Made in the U.S. 75% of the production of that plant is exported overseas. Yes, to Germany, yes, to China. BMW is the largest exporter of cars in the U.S. It's not only BMW. If you're in Japan and you're driving a Nissan, odds are the engine and powertrain were made in Tennessee. You know, why don't we get that out? We're doing well, okay? But we've got to have that talent pipeline, and let me tell you this, that talent pipeline is not only training the next generation, but it's training the current generation. I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but we need to get this point out, and that is you cannot stop learning. Think about what, you know, you're in the workforce for 50 years now. Think about what technology looked like 50 years ago. Vacuum tubes. You guys probably don't even remember what a vacuum tube is. It's like a kind of a big glass transistor thing, you know. But that being said, okay, that being said, this is what's going to happen, and that is accelerating. So you cannot just say, yeah, I'm done with school and that's it. Lifelong learning. I know we get it, but the culture, the population, the rest of the U.S. needs to look at it. The other part was sort of improving the business climate. I won't get too much into that. That was mostly on the policy side. I was a technology person. I will tell you that low-cost energy is going to be a reality in the near future because pretty much it's political suicide to say, hey, we're going to raise the, you know, pump prices and stuff like that. You know, people may not like it, but it's here to stay for now. You know, so how are we thinking and how things are moving along? So I mean, I love this. I like this slide a lot, and I'll tell you a story about this one. You know, this thing over here is an LP. It's a record. If you don't know, you can go Google it or go to the Smithsonian and look them up. But you know, we went to CDs, right, in the 80s, okay? And people said, you will never replace my LP. LP is gone. Somebody said, well, it's making a comeback. Yeah. You just, you know, nah. In fact, actually, once we got data compression, we got our iPods, iPhones, iTunes, blah, 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 and entirely new business opportunities. I mean, just phenomenal, just fantastic. It took a little more with 2D, right? Because, hey, if I want to, with 1D over here, if I want to increase my resolution by 10, it's 10 times more memory, 10 times more processing power. With the 2D image, it's 10 times 10, it's 100. But people said again, well, never replace my Kodachrome, okay? And I was telling a story actually in the West, and I said, write up a one-pager white paper for the president. So I'm thinking, you never replace my Kodachrome. You know what Microsoft Word did with the word Kodachrome? Oh yeah, underlined it in red. That's how far gone Kodachrome is. Microsoft doesn't recognize it. And in fact, if you ask, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, name me a camera company, you might have said Canon or Nikon, but you might have said Polaroid or Kodak as well. You probably wouldn't have said Sony or Samsung. Then you probably wouldn't have mentioned the #1 digital camera maker today, which would be Nokia, not even a camera company, a phone company. By the way, I don't know why we call them phones. You don't really use them to make phone calls too much anymore, okay? And in fact, actually, one of my kids saw, we were over at the White House, and they saw an older phone with an actual rotor on it. And they said, oh, that's why we say dialing a phone. It didn't occur to me. So, and in fact, if you want to add sort of time on that dimension, we can say the same thing for videos, all right? I'll just give you 2 company names, and I won't say any more. Blockbuster and Netflix. I mean, just boom, like that, an enormous corporation is wiped out. And this is going to happen. This is how it's going to go. Innovation, and if you are not ready to make use of that innovation, we're going to have difficulties. The same thing, by the way, is going to happen in 3D. All these great CAD models and CAD systems, this come down in little blocks. It's going to be voxelized and so forth. It's going to be a completely digital world, and we have to be ready to deal with it. We are looking now at digital manufacturing, having the iPhone of the manufacturing floor, getting the data out there, moving the data around, sharing the data. What about security? Yeah, I mean, there will be security and so forth, but I'll give you a couple of examples, okay? Where is this thing here, right? How many people are running, Google Maps, right? Yeah, okay. You load it on, and what happens? I want to use it, and something. Oh, okay. You have just basically said to Google, yeah, you can track me where I'm going and so forth. They know where you are, and you've agreed to it. And the other thing is, when you're using your copy machines that are all digital nowadays, when they make the scan, they actually copy, they're scanning, they're digital, and they're all online. Think about that in terms of security issues and so forth. So, it's coming, and we're going to start to leverage a lot of the technology, and we need the training and the thinking. And by the way, to say, well, I'm not up to that technology is not going to cut it, because that's where you're going to be out of a job. So, where do we need to be going? We've got to change that image of manufacturing. Now, I ask my friends who teach, in K through 12, what do you teach about manufacturing? You know what they say? Who's our most famous manufacturer? Ford. We just had, I don't know if you saw the National Geographic special, right? On Henry Ford, 100 years. So you think 100 years old technology. It's not what the factory of today looks like. Certainly not what the factory of the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like. So we've got to get that back into the K through 12. And I can tell you that if you're in, the Greenville-Spartanburg area, or down in the in the Alabama area where Daimler has a plant and so forth, you have the kids coming out of school. They want to build cars. They want to manufacture cars. So I think we can move it forward, but we also have to teach, even our educators and so forth, why, and this is at the K through 12, that manufacturing is a good, place to go. I tell you right now, community colleges are very important. This is where a lot of it is going to happen in terms of training the people for the plant, where the rubber hits the road. The important people to really execute those innovations, and by the way, who understand what needs to be done and help to innovate. Innovation is not just, I got a PhD and I'm going to sit in my ivory tower. It's across the boards. Bill Gates never graduated, right? That's right. Is that right? They probably gave him a degree, afterwards, but never graduated. And I think that's important. And by the way, the community colleges will also be critical in terms of keeping our workforce up to date. There's no doubt about it. And the president has implemented a number of policies along those areas to support that. And I think also in terms of, the universities and so forth, but really integrating that manufacturing together, okay? And a key aspect, and I've heard about it in terms of some of the boards and so forth, is certification. Because look, if you're certified, what we hear, in a lot of instances, well, we need more CNC operators, right? Now, we all know we don't need more Cs. I mean, operating at sea, I used to operate NCs, right? So that was before the C came along with paper tape, paper tape, yeah. I see some of the older guys, warming my heart, right? And, an operator, you stick the part in, you push on the little pedal and then you hit the go button, right? That's how you operate at scenes. It's the setup person and the programming person, right? That's the person that they really need, right? And that's where, that's where you need to know a little bit more, and so forth. That's the type of person. And if that certification was available, and I'm in Detroit, now I want to go over to, working for the automotive industry, and I'm going to move over to Seattle, okay, and I can go to Boeing, that certification goes with me, okay? So that's very important. It's also important for our returning veterans. I can tell you, they work on very high-tech, products, okay, for the U.S. government, for the Department of Defense. When they come back, if they were appropriately certified, even things like these guys are driving these monster trucks, overseas. They can't even come back and get a truck driver's license here, I mean, let's get it together and sort of bring this together and certify the appropriate skill sets, here. And that would be very, very useful across the board. So these are the things, that you look at. So I think what we have to do is we have to take a look at improving the reputation of manufacturing. You'll hear the federal government say, yep, we don't pick winners and losers, but I tell you, and we've now heard the president say this, but we were talking about this at the White House some time ago already, the states have no problem. Take a look at your state. Hey, we want to bring this plant in for manufacturing and so forth. We'll give you this deal, we'll give you that deal. So the federal government is going to support the states. What the states need, the federal government will supply. We need to engage and support the small and medium-sized enterprises. This is where the bulk of the jobs are, okay? And so we've got to work on that, and I think it's quite exciting. And this whole TRL, technology readiness level. So we're taking a look at how do you support, it's great, we get it onto the benchtop, but how do you scale it up? How do we go to manufacturing, for that? So TRL-1 is fundamental research, TRL-9 is, ready to go for full-scale production. So how do we help, these new innovations, these new ideas to move from the bench into production, okay? And then really just develop some baseline standards, for education and manufacturing, what is critical. And finally, I really want to point out sort of the raw material in our workforce. We have a different set of raw material today. People say, they don't work on engines anymore. Well, yeah, I mean, you can't even, new cars are coming without a dipstick. You can't even check the oil on the thing, right? Why? Because I got a little sensor in my engine that tells me how much oil I have, and it's a whole lot cheaper to put the sensor in there, interface it to the display, than to put a dipstick in there, period. So it's going to go away. The dipstick is going to go away. But look, so the head of our shop in mechanical engineering said, look, Dr. Kerfus, here's the deal. Students used to come to me with a drawing on a piece of paper, I want to make this. You can't possibly make it, and so, we work with the students and, redo it, and they learn, okay, here's how you would make it on a mill and a lathe, et cetera, and we would redo the drawing. Now they come with a memory stick, and they've, drawn it up in CAD, and they've run it through the CAM system, and they've post-processed it, and they said, this is to run on this machine over here. You still can't do it because they've forgotten, oh, gee, I wonder what size tooling we have. What about the fixture that you just smacked into, and well, what am I machining? Plastic? Aluminum, steel, I don't know, titanium, I don't know, let's just say plastic. And then they go off and they machine, 304 stainless steel and burn the tool out. I mean, so there's still a lot of learning to be done. We just have a different skill set, and this is what we need to teach. So I think we can't go back and say, oh, we got to make them learn how to use a dipstick and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that ship has sailed. So we have a different basis that we have to teach from, a different, raw material, if you will, for our workforce, and this is the direction that we're going. So back to the big picture, it is about wealth creation. I can tell you, manufacturing is here to stay. The nominal numbers, if you look out there in terms of projections, are pretty impressive. We will have a trade surplus. The rosy numbers are scary. We need more people like you out there because I don't think that we can staff all the production facilities. And this is a great place to build things, the United States. You can be sustainable and you can be efficient. In fact, people say, well, energy is cheap, we'll use more of it. No, you don't want to use a lot more energy because, it can fluctuate, which adds a lot of risk in terms of your production costs, so minimize that. Plus, the less energy you use, the less you have to pay, so the more efficient you can be. We've got to enable the whole workforce, okay? And again, this is what you people are doing. Yes, a lot of you go to the big the big companies, but a lot of you go to the medium and the small companies. So very important to get out the latest technology, the latest people, the latest capabilities out there. It's a new workforce foundation. We have a different skill set. We have to leverage that. We have to think along those lines. Let's not, roll it back, 50 years and say, well, we'll just start from scratch. And for the United States of America, it is about enabling innovation and ensuring that talent pipeline. But let me assure you of this, in terms of the world, it is about making a difference, okay? And that is, if, we don't want to bring all of that back, say, hey, we're going to bring all the manufacturing back to the U.S. If manufacturing is occurring around the world, people have good jobs, people are happy. Happy people tend, to generate a lot of security, worldwide. It's the people who are unhappy, who don't have jobs and so forth, that make life a little bit difficult. So basically, I'll close with this statement and then one more from the President. But in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So lifelong learning is critical. Please remember that. And so I will just finish up, and this is a statement for the President, State of the Union 2012. Basically, and by the way, my grandparents, both of my sets of grandparents came from Europe after World War I, from a war-torn Europe. This certainly applies, when I would talk to them, this certainly applies to them. I think it applies to somebody who might have come over on the Mayflower. And I think it certainly applies to somebody who is coming over just today to the United States. Think about America within our reach, a country that leads the world in educating its people. In America, that attracts a new generation of high-tech manufacturing and high-paying jobs. It's a future where we're in control of our own energy, and our security and prosperity aren't so tied to unstable parts of the world. We're getting there. You read that in the papers. It's an economy built to last. And I think these last two statements are what it's all about in terms of people who are coming to this nation, whether it was our forebears or whether it's people coming in today. It's a place where hard work pays off and where responsibility is rewarded. So thank you very much for your attention.